Hey everyone, welcome to today's edition of One Single Story, where each weekday we tackle a single relevant question based on our Bible reading for that day. This week our reading is centered around the book of 1 Thessalonians, and today I'm joined by Jay Rivenbark and Zack Unkenholz. So let's look at a question in chapter 2, verses 13 through 20 is where our reading was, but 19 and 20 says this. It says, "After all, what gives us hope and joy, and what will be our proud reward and crown as we stand before the Lord when he returns, it is you. Yes, you are our pride and joy." So as leaders, pastors, whatever word you use, how do the people we serve become our pride and joy?
I think that, as a youth pastor, we play games, we have a lot of fun and things like that. But I will say, like, looking back and just seeing, students who 2 years ago um, would have said they weren't a Christian or so they didn't really know what they believed or why they believed in God. And now seeing them inviting their friends, talking about God, like to their teachers, and even like them asking me questions that challenge me in my faith and want me to grow closer to God. Those are some of the most incredible, some of the most incredible things, and that I'm humbled to see how God has been able to grow them and how He's used me in this. I'm humbled by that, and so I think that's that. I think that um, that pride and joy that we have in that seeing that, wow, God was able to use me to influence this person and to help them grow in their relationship with God or even find God, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, I would agree. Those, I think back at Bertie, where I served over the past years, and you start thinking about the stories of people and people who are there who have come to know the Lord through the work there. And then you think about the stories of people, the marriages that are still together and better and stronger because of the work that's going on there. And I think about people who have had tragedies in their life and they've worked through that. And even, with ministries like Grief Share has helped them process through. And to see many of those people come full circle and now they are serving, giving back to the Lord and to the church and to other people. And it's just, there's just a sense of pride and satisfaction to see all of those various parts and entities taking place, and to realize that you're able to have some part in that. I don't know how you can not have some joy and satisfaction out of that, seeing and hearing those stories.
Are there any particular things that encourage you the most?
I'll give one example. So when we go to camp every year, when they first get to camp, there's a little card they have to fill out, and it asks them a question of, what do you think it means to be a Christian? And sometimes it says, be a good person. They don't really know. That might be new or first time coming to camp, that new to our youth group and stuff. But then one of the questions they ask, is like, have you put your faith in Christ? And each year, seeing the students who continue to come back and just see like how they've grown, like in that, just as an example of like a student 2 years ago putting "I'm not a Christian" on the card, last year putting "not sure if I'm a Christian," and then this year being able to say I put my faith in Christ, and saying when they did it and saying how, why they believe in God, and that, and that's incredible. And just reading those, I'm like, brings a tear to my eye. I'm like, this is amazing to see how they're owning their own faith, and that's incredible to see. And I've seen that with multiple students. That's awesome.
Yeah, for me, it would, without question, be the ones that have come to saving faith and are part of the church.
Mm-hmm.
And the other large group that bring me the most joy are the people who have been disenfranchised from church. Most of them, for many years, decades even, had nothing to do with church, and have come and their faith has been renewed and restored. And you know, when they say things like, "I can't wait till next Sunday," this is the best hour of the week. Those stories, those are just, those are refreshing and super encouraging over and over again.
I think for every pastor, people who are coming to Christ and is transforming their lives is significant to them. Marriages that have been saved are probably
Mm.
would be at the top of the list of things. People who have had some great fall, might be an addiction or some other sin they've committed, wrong they've done, and those are good things. On the opposite side of that, though, the most painful ones are the people that you pour your heart and life into, and they walk away from faith. Those are the hardest ones for me. Those are extremely, extremely painful. I tell people, I don't lose a lot of sleep if somebody leaves the church and goes to another church. If somebody leaves the church and doesn't go to church, it gives me great distress because I know the value of that community. If this isn't the right community for you,
then so be it.
I can live with that. I get it. Sometimes it ain't the right community for me. And I say that jokingly. Sometimes we all, you're going to have moments and time. But if it's not the right community for you, that's one thing. But if you just don't feel connected enough that you have any community, that's dangerous. And those are hard for me. So the people who walk completely away from faith, particularly if I've invested a lot, it's hard to watch. And people who abandon a community of faith altogether, and maybe they, I don't mean that they're just throw up their hands and quit. They legitimately may have been hurt. They legitimately may have had some problem or issue, but they isolate themselves instead of finding that place. Are there pain points for you on the opposite side of the joy?
Sure. Much like what you said, it's the people who have been a part of your life, part of your fellowship for an particularly extended period of time, that for whatever reason go away. And again, if they genuinely are in a fellowship, they're serving, they feel like that's where they need to be and what they need to do. I'm good with that. I understand that application. But it's people who disconnect for whatever reason. And for me, on a personal level, the vast majority of times, if you can ever have a conversation with those people and get some insight, then you're like, oh, okay, I see where you're coming from. And it helps me understand. But the ones that they're here today and they're gone tomorrow, and there's a disconnect where they won't even have a conversation, to help you understand what's going on in their life. It may be something we can help them with, we can't help them with, maybe a hurt or an offense. Because I say to people sometimes, if there's a problem, I can't help solve the problem if I don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, it's the people who move on but don't at least communicate and or continue to have some type of relationship. For people because I think they feel awkward, and they see you and just they go down a different way or different aisle in the store. And I'm like, what's that about? I can still be your friend, still care about you. And so those, I think, for me would be the most painful.
For me as a youth pastor, my students eventually graduate and they move on. They move away, they go to college, things like that. And I'll say, from my last church, a lot of my students that were there are now in college, and some of them I see, joining, Young Life or things like that, or volunteering in different capacities or finding new churches. That's very exciting. But when I see a student who was great in youth group, and then now I've seen how their life has kind of turned, and just knowing you're powerless to do anything, it's like they're at college, and that's the thing is that you just trust in God. I just have to realize that, well, they're in God's hands. They were never really, they've always been in God's hands, and there's nothing, there's really very limited what I can do. You can reach out to those people. But I will say too, though, I've been very encouraged where I've had students that were pretty bad in youth group. Like one kid in particular who gave me a lot of trouble. Now they're about 3 years into college, and they reached out to me and told me that they put their faith in Christ and they wanted me to be the first person to know. And I was like, that's the kind of stuff that brings you to tears. And that kid, I would have never expected them to put their faith in Christ, but I talked to them about it all the time, and I really, wanted them to know the character of God and who He is and His love for them. And there's a lot we can do, but sometimes we just have to realize that, it's not really, none of it's really in our hands. It is all in God's hands, and that gives me some comfort, but doesn't mean there aren't disappointing times though as well.
Well, thank you for joining us today on this edition of One Single Story. We hope you'll be back with us tomorrow as we continue our conversation around the book of 1 Thessalonians.